Hey, good afternoon. This is Tyler Franklin with Axis Seed. I hope you all are well. Many producers across the state of Virginia and the state of North Carolina as well are still trying to figure out what they're going to plant this coming year regarding corn and soybeans. And I want to take a little bit of time to talk about interpreting yield results because there can be a lot of confusing information presented out there, and it's often difficult trying to decide exactly what you think is best for your operation. There's a lot of data available, and it's very confusing and hard to analyze properly. So I want to talk about a lot of the differences out there and some of the best ways to really figure out what is the best product for your operation. Even though there are a lot of third-party, non-biased data analyzing companies out there, they're still relatively new, and many producers are still making these decisions on their own and not utilizing these third-party analyzing companies. To go even further, there's still a lot of producers who don't have yield monitors on their combines, or who don't bother to calibrate the combines or even pay attention to what's going on in the field because they're so busy at harvest. So I want to talk a little bit about the best ways to interpret this data and why it's important to really pay attention to what you have going on in your field. Farmers are completely overloaded with plot data, with all kinds of information, and it really becomes a challenge when deciding what's best for you. So let's talk an example. A perfect example are seed companies. Many times, and you probably see dozens over the course of the winter, seed companies are presenting you plot results from the closest plot to your operation. And their products look great compared to the competitors. And then the next week you're visited with a different brand, and they're showing you their results that are close to you, which completely contradict what you were just presented the following week by their competitor. This becomes really confusing. Keep in mind that one plot, unless it's on your farm, one plot information is really useless data. You need several replications within a region to really get some strong information that you can rely on. If you have one plot on your farm, that tells you what worked that year on your operation. It's very weak information. And plus, when you see contradicting information, it's hard for you to trust it anyway. So what a lot of people do then is they'll go look at university data or third-party research. This can also be confusing because there's a huge variance from one location to another. So it's very important when you're looking at all the university studies out there. In fact, when you look at the overall performance tab, some people get turned off just because the amount of information on there. But what is really important when you look at these data sets is the relative yield. And relative yield is the variance from average. So if you have a relative yield of 105% on that particular hybrid, that means that it's 5% above average of everything. And likewise, if you have a value of 95%, that means it's 5% below average. What that does is it takes all the locations together and gives you a nice number that means a little bit more than just what the yield is. Because if you've got a hybrid that yields 200 at one location and the next location saw a lot of dry weather and it's 105, but it's still above average, then you still have some real reliable information there when you're looking at relative yield. So, you've got seed companies giving you information, you've got universities giving you information. It's important to know what's what and what's really important. Focus on the relative yield and focus on several plots from within your region averaged together and utilize the relative yields. Also understand that small plots, small replicated plots mean really nothing. You've got to have dozens and dozens. The more plots you have averaged together, the more valuable that information is. And understand the size of the test or the size of the strip. Did the variety just go 15 feet? Was it replicated at all? Did it go through a bottom where the yields were good? Did it also go all the way across the sandy spot in the field? The larger the check, the larger the test, the more valuable the information is. So a lot of times you'll see how big of a variety trial, a variety plot is. If it's just a couple hundred feet, or if it's just dozens of feet versus 900 feet or 1,000 feet, there's a big difference there in how valuable that information is. I've seen a lot of plots that come from just the best part of a field. Well, that's great understanding top end, but what about the worst part of the field? I mean, it'd be really nice if you could find a hybrid or a soybean variety that is 110% of average, the relative yield, in that good part and in the sand. So I'd like to see both. When you're in your combine and you're comparing one variety to a next, let's say you ran out of one variety and you started planting with a new variety. When you're making that pass and going back and forth, it is nearly impossible to see a 15 bushel difference in corn. Likewise with soybeans, it's nearly impossible to see a 3, a 4, even a 5 bushel difference with your eye. And some people may say it doesn't really mean that much, but 15 bushels of corn at $4 is $60 an acre. I mean, those are big decision makers right there. Likewise with soybeans, you're talking about a 3 bushel difference can be $27 an acre. And if you can't see this with your naked eye, which I get a lot of times because the farmer will say, well, we didn't see any difference out in the field. You can't see 15 bushels. You can't see these small increments. So it's important to be out there measuring these increments however you can. Even when the yield monitor, you're watching the yield monitor side by side with two different products, and it's going, for corn, for example, it's going from 180 to 220 to 150 to 230 to 240, and then you make the next pass and the next product, you cannot see. So what I do in that scenario is I ask the farmer when he's in one variety to zero the weight and record it at the other end, and then re-zero it in the next variety and record that and compare the actual weights versus watching the numbers fluctuate. So then you get an average, then you get a real solid number across the same distance, which you can put some weight on. It's really, really hard to properly analyze all the information we're given right now. One of the most common comparisons in product decision tools I see a farmer use, it's probably the most used but most efficient method for comparing products is a field to field. So a farmer will say, well, X product did 140 bushels over here and this product over here did 180. Even though the fields may be just right across the road or even just a mile away. That is not a true comparison, even though it seems like it could be. But rainfall, as everybody knows, can vary significantly with just a couple hundred yards. The timing of planting between the two locations, fertilizing along with rotations, the amount of in-rows that one field has compared to the next, that all affects yield. Fields can vary in the overall averages based on the percentage of wood edges that one has versus the next, the amount of drowned out areas that you have in one area, compaction zones, fertility zones, and even something as simple as the direction the rows are planted can change how the sunlight interacts with one field versus another. So when one farm averages 150 with product X and product B is in another farm that averages 175, that is not a true comparison side by side. I often have a producer will say, well, X variety was the highest yielding variety I had this year. And he's excited about it. And I've been in that situation myself. You always remember what happened last year and what was the best. But it's important to understand that even though it was your highest yielding variety and you're excited about it, that information doesn't really mean anything if that product was all by itself on the farm that received the most rainfall. There's a possibility that the best hybrid for your operation, the one that's actually the strongest and that you really need to be planting, could have been on the farm that got the least amount of rainfall, so you're not as excited about it. So when you're comparing what was on one side of the farm to the other side of the farm, much less separate farms, it's not a true side-by-side. The best way that I have found to figure out what works for you when you're presented with a new product, and this could even not deal with seed, this could be with foliar products or fungicides or insecticides or whatever it may be, are split field trials or replicated trials across a field. With seed, I like to get a farmer to split his planter. And so let's say he has a 12-row planter, get him to put one variety in one half of the planter and another variety in the other half of the planter. That means when he goes back and forth down the field, he's getting a replicated trial across different varying soil types, different elevations. Doesn't matter if it's a good year or a bad year in that particular farm. You've got something to compare it to. And the result is a true product comparison across significant acreage. It's not just a quarter-acre strip. You're getting it spread out across a significant amount of area, across dozens of variables on your own operation. Still, it's hard to see that 15 bushel difference, but with yield monitors over the course of 50 acres, you should be able to see product X average 150 and product B average 155. That's significant, but you can't see that with your naked eye going side by side down the field. Even if you don't have a yield monitor, there's a lot of weigh wagons that are available, there's scales available, and at the very least, you'll be able to notice a difference in how quickly the combine tank fills up with how many passes you've made down the field. So there's a lot of information out there. It's a lot of information presented to you that you have to decipher. And there's a lot of different ways that farmers can look at what's going on in their field. So it's important to understand the best ways to really interpret what's going on. It's also important to understand that product placement is critical. Crop rotation, drainage, soil type, row spacing, seeding rates, these are all significant variables that can affect plants' performance. So putting the right product on the right acre is critical in having success. And last but not least, don't make these decisions without getting help. I remember when I was farming full time, I thought I had a great handle on what I thought were the best varieties for my farm, and now I'm looking at hundreds of different products from all across, from all the different providers, and it's all that I can do just to figure out what I think is best. So it's important to get information from your brand representative, whatever your brand may be. There's a sales representative for them that their job is to understand what products are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and what product they have that best fits your operation. So don't do this on your own. If we can help in any way, please let us know. Please let myself know, or any of the Axis sales reps in your area. We'd be glad to sit down with you and talk about the products we have and which ones best fit your operation, and show you all the information we've got, whether it's plot data, university data, split trials that we've done next to your farm, or even multi-brand plots that we've put in with operators, where an operator will say, all right, his 4 favorite brands, they put in their top 4 varieties, and they plant them all based on maturity. A lot of farmers are starting to do that and make their own decisions based on that. But any way that we can help, we're interested in doing that. Make sure that you're using the data and information that you're presented and that you're gathering correctly. And if you have any questions, anything that I can help with, please let us know. Thank you.